Cool. But thank you again for doing this. It really means a lot. And I do have some questions. If you don't feel comfortable answering the questions, like for whatever reason, don't feel like you have to. But one of them I wanted to ask, like, and some of them are gonna be like a little bit basic and obvious, obviously. But like, first one, let's just do you feel like there is a glass ceiling for Black, Indigenous, and people of color when it comes to the fight community as a whole, for getting jobs as choreographers, getting jobs as teachers, just kind of even getting roles as fighters sometimes?
Yeah, well, like I was saying, I went to the Winter Wonderland earlier, earlier this year, and I realized just how like incestuous the fight community is. You know what I'm saying? Everyone knows each other. These fight masters are in this secret club. You know what I mean? That you can only get invited to, and like by all means necessary. That's cool. There's one black man in it, one out of all of them. Um, Not a black woman that I know of. So if I'm wrong, somebody let me know. But not a black woman or a woman of color at all. Um, and with that being said, along with a lot of other things, we're so many years behind. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're just not exposed to it. It's not presented to us. We don't see ourselves with swords in our hands in anything. You know what I mean? Um, so, absolutely, absolutely. And it just feels like I said, when I was there, I just had this feeling in the back of my head that I had to prove myself because I was new and everyone was looking at me like, they didn't know what to expect because they hadn't seen anybody like me at a workshop recently or at all. You know what I mean? So absolutely, absolutely, I think it's there, along with a lot of other things in a lot of other places in theater. It's just yeah, it's just kind of like our like instead of like a rain cloud, it's like this glass ceiling that follows us around. You know what I mean? Um,
That'll don't
so
stand up too
yeah,
quickly, you'll
absolutely,
hit your head on the glass ceiling.
absolutely, absolutely. But I'm like, shit. Everybody stand up real quick, real quick out of that shit. Like, and that's kind of what after the first day, um, that's kind of like what my mission was because I remember feeling like I've never felt so at home and out of place at the same time because of my love for stage combat and fighting and swords and all these new techniques. I was learning a shit ton. I was learning a shit ton. Like I said, that was my first workshop. Fresh out of grad school, like I've only done what I did in class. So I was learning so much and I was like so happy, but I just felt so uncomfortable, you know, when you're the only one like you. You're one black woman in a room full of white men. You got white men teaching you. All your partners are white men. And then they want to tell you what to do because they don't think you know, because I fucked around and said, yes, it's my first time with the broadsword. But that doesn't mean I need you to give me notes. Like I know, I know. Let me not go off on a tangent, but yes,
Hey, I'm
but
all for going off on a tangent.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, absolutely. The answer to your question is
have,
absolutely yes.
have you ever had your authority or ability questioned based off of the color of your skin while working in the industry?
Well, yes. I think it has to do with me being black, me being a woman, and me being younger, right? Because I have choreographed shows or worked on shows, and just gotten pushed back from older actors. Because they're like, yeah, I've been doing this. I've been doing stage combat for 10 years, like this, and that, and they just automatically think that they know more than me. And mind you, like like Ethiopian America was my first professional show, right? I choreographed some other ones back in Champaign, at like small community theaters and things like that. But um, that was the first time I experienced, and there are still some things that are unclear about that process in hindsight, because I don't know if you saw the whole thing. There's another young man um, under my face that I have never met, never met, but apparently we worked on the same show. But I wasn't aware until, and like I said, I don't want to get too messy because conversations still need to be had. But it was just striking that this all came out in this time, and me thinking that I was the one and only white choreographer, and now that I've gotten some recognition, now that there's this like white man's head there haunting me, and I'm like, who is this? I've never met him. Where did this come from? You know. So that was a shock to me. Um, um, but like I said, there's some things that need to be cleared up. But what it looks like right now, and what it seems like, is that conversations were had that I was unaware of, and someone else came in and did I don't know what. But now I can't. Apparently, I'm the first woman to win a Jeff in that category, a non-equity Jeff. First Black person to win a non-equity Jeff in that category. But I can't even have it. You know what I mean? Like I can't even have it because I'm sharing it somehow. You know. Um, so that kind of like dampened my excitement about it. But what I don't do for recognition anyway. You know, I I I do it for my fulfillment and for other little Black girls to see themselves doing something that they probably never thought that they could or should do, only because they've never seen anyone who looks like them doing it. You know what I mean? Um, and so yeah, that is much much more important. But yeah, yeah. And I did another. David Woolley, correct? So I assisted him doing a show, and he had to like leave, and so I kind of like took over for one. And there were like a few like Black men that were like grown, like not quite middle aged, but older than me. And it was all like I could tell that there were some were great, but some kind of was like, okay, you're a woman trying to teach me how to move my body. Like, they didn't want to seem like they didn't know how to already do what I was trying to tell them to do. You know what I mean? And like that was like, and that was just, it was mostly unarmed and just physical stuff. It was really stylized, but yeah, it was just like I have my authority questioned a lot, and I can't help but feel like that's because of the way I look, how I am, and like how old I am. Like I don't think that if I was even a middle-aged Black woman that they would be like, no, 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 like I got it. Like, oh, well, what's that? Like, like even like when they're joking around, I'm like, there's truth in that. There's truth in that, because I know you don't want to listen to this young Black woman. Of course, when Willie is there, it's like, what you want me to do? Like, you know what I mean? And that, it's not even just like Black men in particular. That's one of the experiences that I've had. And I've been lucky enough to be able to work with Black and brown people in fight choreography, like choreographing them, like Ethiopian America, all Black and brown people, um, on the stage, and in the team, well, mostly in the team, but yeah, And I felt like I was really very, very fortunate to have that experience and to be able to work with people like that. Um, Although I know that that's not really realistic in the grand scheme of things. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that kind of go into that.
Do you feel that you have maybe been denied certain opportunities to choreograph shows that involve sword fighting, like Shakespeare shows or like swashbuckling Captain Blood type shows, because those shows usually tend to be like mostly white cast, mostly the white creative team, and not have a lot of black or people of color involved in them?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm really, really new to this, right? So my expectations, honestly, for even getting work like this when I just graduated, super low. I thought that I needed to be SAFD certified as a choreographer before anyone would let me even say anything, you know? Um, and then, but just because of like networking and connections and people knowing that I choreograph, I was asked to do Ethiopian America. And then I was asked to actually do Duchess of Malfi with Babes with Blades. Now, that is kind of like, that is really exciting to me, first of all. I didn't think I would be choreographing swords, especially, like big swashbuckly, like, you know, crazy thing like Duchess of Malfi. But thank God for companies like Babes with Blades, who are super inclusive, who are super excited to have a woman of color choreographing their cast, because they're just a very inclusive company. Um, so, but that all of that got cut off due to coronavirus and the fact that like nothing's happening now. So I really haven't gotten. I don't honestly think I've even gotten to the point where I would be denied work like that. You know what I mean? Just because I really just started. I really just started, and I'm still just trying to like act and like get myself out there. But yeah, so it had. I don't think it's happened to me personally because, like I said, I've just been fortunate to um, kind of just be in the right place at the right time. Because I remember I getting like getting certified, like my skills proficiency tests, and I was really excited. I got like all these recommended passes. Like David Willie adjudicated me, and like gave me all this great stuff. And like my last year of grad school, I just posted on Instagram, and I was like, "Babes and Blades, like come at me, like look, I'm certified, I can fight." And then a year later, the artistic director reached out and was like, "Hey, did you choreograph?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I met with her, our first meeting. I was like, did someone recommend me? She was like, I remember you posted on Instagram like a year ago. And I was like, you know what I mean? So like, I just feel like I was just fortunate in that way. Um, I will say I was super nervous and super intimidated going into it. Because I've never choreographed a whole show with swords. You know what I mean? Like little scenes and whatnot, and of course unarmed things. But yeah, super nervous going into it, and I was really transparent, about like where I am in my career, and they're really, really accepting and really willing to work with me. So I will say that, like, thank God for companies like that, because if it wasn't, like, I'm not about to get hired at Chicago Shakespeare. I'm not about to get hired at any of these big theater. Like, that's not even on my radar. Probably because I know that, like, they're probably going to be like, you want to do what? Okay. All right.
I remember I had a conversation with about something similar where the lack of black and students of color in the stage combat classes at Columbia College, Chicago. And oh yeah, I would talk to some of these other students, but they were always said that basically they felt that there would be no opportunity for them to get to do this later. Like they would be less likely to get cast in shows that involve sword fighting or get hired as choreographers. So they didn't want to basically waste their credit hours on something that they didn't feel would benefit them in the long run. So it's like, oh, I'm going to do some more voice classes. I'm going to do some more musical theater classes. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that instead. Because I'm more likely to get hired for participating in a show that involves that than I am something that involves rapier and dagger or broadsword.
Yeah, yeah. I completely agree with that. And I would even say to the point where you do see the occasional black person on stage with a sword, it's they still weren't cast inclusively. Like I can almost guarantee they were not cast inclusively, right? What theaters like to do is make it seem like they're inclusive by putting black people on stage, but inclusion is not specifically casting somebody to be black so that you have the the color on stage, right? And I feel like that's what a lot of them do. It's casting, and I don't even like saying colorblind because look, my skin and my color, it comes with culture, it comes with my background, it comes with my history. Like, so don't act like you don't see my color, okay? Because that's disrespectful. That's not what I want to hear. I don't want to hear that you're colorblind casting or that, you know what I mean? Because that oftentimes doesn't work out because most of the things that we put on stage were written in times of like really, really uh I don't even know how to. I'm trying to say it in a way that just applies to the past, but because we see that it's not it's not all the way in the past. I would say more when racism and discrimination of black people and women was more accepted, right? So you cannot put a black person in this role and like without considering his culture. Like we did in school we did Grapes of Wrath, right? So when you talk about the time period, when you talk about the setting, and then when you add these black people in, you can't act like these black people have the same things running in their mind as these white people do. You know what I mean? They're worrying about the dust bowl. They're worrying about the dust and this, and that. But these black people are also worried about getting killed. They're worried about being seen with these white people. Like, you know what I mean? So you can't just put somebody in a role without adapting it.
Yeah, especially
You know?
since in the Grapes of Wrath, there's a whole conversation about police abuse of power, and it's like you can't just ignore what's going on right now, and then just be like, "What?
Exactly.
They're just black people who happen to be there." It's like, no, this has a lot bigger implications that you are completely ignoring.
Yeah, exactly. So like what I think theaters need to work more on like actual inclusion. Okay? Like casting these roles based off of talent, ability, like you know what I mean? What how you act like you cast them in the first place, but actually do the thing. Like um and yeah, so that goes back to what I was saying my whole undergrad career. I was never exposed to it at all. It's just something that, like I said, we don't see ourselves in, and then doesn't seem important. Just like Shakespeare. Instead of doing Shakespeare, because we didn't see it. It wasn't until I went to grad school that I was like, oh, I understand this. I feel this. Like this language doesn't like it's beautiful in a way that speaks to me, that like sounds good to my ear just because of this rhythm that's in me. And that's sorry, I don't know, did
You're
I
good.
um like I just saw myself in it so hard when it was presented to me in a way that I could do it. You know what I mean? It wasn't white people speaking in British accents at me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then over the years I was like, I can talk like me. I don't have to try to talk like someone else. And that's another thing. Even if we do see ourselves in it, we don't sound like ourselves. you know because of Shakespeare talk and the way that it's taught a lot of times. you know a lot of trying to make black people lose their accents and adopt another one, a so-called general American accent. And I'll even say that as much as some of my teachers are inclusive, there's still these things that's ingrained in them of how it's supposed to be spoken. You know what I mean? That doesn't take into account my culture, like my accent. Like, why do I have to take it? Voice class was a whole nother thing because, like, I was in a program that was unusually diverse, right? So there ended up being 7 of us in the end, and there were 4 black people and 3 white people. Where is that in another MFA program? You know what I mean? Like, that's just how that's how it worked out. But it was such a clear divide when we did accents and dialects. Like, how many were which of us had to adapt more? Which of us had to change our normal sounds more to reach this so-called general American or even RP estuary, like all these European languages. And we were also fortunate to not just do that, and a lot of programs just do that. And of course, we did all that stuff first. We did all the European accents, and then it was like, okay, you can choose your accent. We're gonna do this or that. But that's, like, again, I'm going off on a tangent, but this fight, this stage stuff, it all stems from that. It's all like the flower from these seeds that we've planted in the American theater. You know, like, that's how it's rearing its ugly head. That's it comes out in all these different ways.
Yeah, one of the other questions I wanted to ask is, how do you feel about the Eurocentric view of stage combat and stage combat weapons? Like the fact that most of the weapons and practices are based off of a European, like medieval broadsword, rapier and dagger, small sword, all this stuff, and there isn't a lot of attention given or prestige, I guess is the way to put it, given to other styles that are maybe non-European or not within the organization itself. Do you feel like that's an issue that comes up?
Most definitely. And I feel like it also goes back to the fact that we don't have these these teachers teaching it. We don't have teachers of color teaching it. Why do these white people want to fight with African weapons or anything that's not European? That's what they've been taught. That's what they see themselves in. I took a Spanish rapier class at the Winter Wonderland workshop, and I was just floored at how different it was. Like, like I was, same weapon, but just your entire body is different. Your your grips are different. Like, you move with your body, you move with your entire body as opposed to just your wrist or your arm. Like, it starts in your feet, and reverberates, and it's like, that makes sense when you think about all of, like Spanish dancing and just like the culture, like how much of just like essentially that culture comes out in like your style of fighting, you know? And I did like Kali double sticks. Like I'm trying to think of anything that wasn't, European, but like I said, that was this much of the whole curriculum, you know?
Yeah.
But me be just trying to do all these things that I've never done before. Like, and when you talk about just getting, what are the most basic like weapons to get certified in? What'd you start on?
It was unarmed and rapier and dagger and two-handed broadsword.
Right. I started on small sword, single sword, unarmed. We did rapier and dagger. And it never did it occur to me, never ever did I think about this, that like, oh, we aren't doing any non-Eurocentric weapons. They weren't even presented to me. They don't sell them when all those weapon makers come to the workshop and like sell, like, you know, you're getting the same weapons. It's like no one is like not even on the radar as something that's even possible. Like, they don't do skills proficiency tests in it. Like those things are like extracurricular too.
Yes.
They're like electives,
Yes.
you
That
know?
is that is the exact same wording somebody else I was talking to about this. It's like
Yeah.
European
I
and
mean,
American history is the standard, and African and any other culture is an elective that you could take.
yeah, exactly. Which is like American history is Black history. Like every time, but the fact that we've been taught that this is American history and then this is Black history. You know what I mean? Like this is this little dot of Black history within the grand scheme of American history. And that's how it's always been looked at. That's how it's been presented in the one paragraph in our textbooks. That's how it's been presented in our whole curriculum. You know what I mean? Like our standards of learning tests all through K through 12 that we do in Virginia, that you need to like pass a different class to the next grade or whatever. It's American history. It in like nowhere in the American history are Black people highlighted at all, except for Martin Luther King. Nah, probably not even. I doubt it was even like any questions on the test about Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
It's like this what he did. He died.
And it's always
You know what
Martin
I
Luther
mean?
King, not really Malcolm X.
Exactly. Exactly. You want to showcase, but then don't even like highlight the fact that he was peaceful. All his peaceful shit did not save his life. You don't highlight the fact that he did everything right and was still killed with no justice. You know what I mean? So so these non-Eurocentric weapons are like a part of this fight thing as a whole. They've just been omitted. They've just been omitted because they can be. They can be just like a part of the system. When you think about like a Black man climbing to the top, like making his way to the top, there's no way he did that without any interaction with white people, right? But the other way around, a white person can go from 0 to 60 and not ever even look in the direction of a Black person. You know what I mean? He has everything he needs in his community, and saying his or her or them. Um, but that's how it is in the fight world. We're not these weapons aren't even presented to us. And I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't even tell you an African weapon or style of fighting. You know, I just
If you are interested, I can recommend the Historical African Martial Arts Association on Facebook. That's a Facebook group I'm a part of, and I've like studied with Demonstith there, and there's like a whole wealth of African styles, African American styles, Latin American through the African diaspora. It's like machete, Ethiopian shotel,
yeah,
kalinda, capoeira, like so
yeah, that's
much
where I am.
there that is infused with the culture that it comes from. And one of the things that sometimes bugs me is when you have these fight choreographers who will like take a workshop in this class, or like do some brief research on it, and then they're like, well, now I'm qualified to teach or choreograph this for stage combat. Because I'm like, but you don't know, you haven't put in the effort. You are wearing this as if it's a new suit of clothes that you then take off to go do something else, and it's not that. It's more.
Yeah, yeah, and like I say these things also like from past experiences, but also that I'm still in it. You know what I mean? Like I still am not saying, not that I'm a victim or like I can't do the research, but when you don't when you don't see yourself in it, when you don't see you or your people doing these things, it's easy to not know it exists. Or like to know it exists in the back of your mind, but not even that it's possible that you can do it right now. You know what I mean? Like, because I don't know any teachers. You know, I still even I can do all the research and still not feel equipped if if it's not, you know, if I don't have the resources.
One of the things that I've been doing, like throughout the research that I've been kind of doing myself, is that uh, like the idea of racism as it is modern and race as it is modernly understood today was not something that was necessarily the same as it was in the past. And throughout some of the research I've done about the presence of black and indigenous and people of color and Africans in Europe before the Atlantic slave trade existed was more prevalent than it is made apparent in our like curriculum and history and stuff like that. Like I was there was this I call him the Shakespeare rapper because that's how I was first introduced to him. But this gentleman named Akala, who basically had like I think 2 honorary doctorates in sociology and cultural anthropology, and he was talking about how Jamaica was considered a part of England before Scotland was. And they were considered more English than the Scottish were because they spoke English, they had a parliamentary democracy, you know, and like they had black skin, they had dark skin, but they were still considered, oh yes, you're part of the Commonwealth. This is back in like the mid 1600s. And one of the things that I've noticed is that people tend to operate off of this false idea, this false concept of what history is, i.e., white, because it was whitewashed that way. And then that bleeds over into fight choreography and theater as a whole, in that directors, casting people, and fight choreographers sometimes feel like they need to justify the existence of a person of color in a Shakespeare show, in a Captain Blood, in these shows where their version of history, black people didn't exist. Do you feel like that's something that you have had to push against sometimes? Like, or do you feel like people feel the need to justify your existence sometimes when it comes to theater?
Hmm. Well, yes. And you know, I feel like that goes back to um, these theaters not using just just plain flat out inclusion. Like, I cannot stress that enough. Like, diversity and inclusion is not necessarily the same thing. Like, it's not the same thing, really. Um, but I do. Okay, so I I went I did Illinois Shakespeare Festival last summer. And aside from a whole slew of issues that deal with race, um, I, I saw them trying to be inclusive, right? With how everything looks on the outside, and like you know, I played Celia, and another black woman played Rosalind. It's like, okay, yeah, they're cousins, whatever. But I had a white dad, you know, and
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
it's like no, you know, it's really funny. It's really funny, and but I feel like Shakespeare, because of the amount of like suspension of disbelief and like the absurdity, sometimes you can get away with things like that.
Mm-hmm. Like, oh, there's
Um,
fairies, wandering around.
yeah, and nobody questions it. They're like, her black ass got a white dad. Okay, no further questions. Like, you know, um, and like I said, I feel like they just like how it looks. I do say, I will say that even if your intention is to just look good because you have black people on stage, we still need it, right? Um, I was okay. I was actually understudying Romeo and Juliet um, at a theater, pretty big theater. But I was just watching the show one day, and I'm sorry. I feel like I'm not even finishing one story before I go to the next one. But
Don't worry
look,
about
that's just
it.
how my mind works. That's just how my mind works. Um, so I was watching the show one day, plain clothes. I was talking to one of my friends who works there, and we were just it was intermission. We were just talking, yada yada. Like I said, I don't have a sign on my head that says I'm working with this show. Like I'm an understudy. Like I'm just a patron, at this point. So we're chatting it up, and like this older white woman comes and she's like, uh, how or like what? How many stars did this get or something? And I was like, oh well, excuse me, we're still in previews. It hasn't been reviewed yet. And she's like, oh okay. And then mind you, this production, sorry, this production has a lot of black people in the cast, right? It's like I don't know, maybe half black or something like that. And so then she's like, oh, okay. So she starts to walk away, and then she comes back and she's like, you know, good for them, giving black actors a chance. This is gonna look so good on their resume, like this. I'm like, first she says, yeah, because she was like, oh, we're still in previews. I mean, I'm a subscriber. I didn't realize I had a preview date, right? So she's like, yeah. So then we get to the point where she's like, giving black actors a chance, and I sit like I usually can't control my face when I'm talking to people. So she says that, and I'm like, what? She was like, this is so good for them, and I'm just like, I just had to not say anything and just like wait until she walked away because I was like, okay, there's a lot of problems with this statement, right? Why does it look any different on a black person's resume than it does on a white person's resume? One. Two, why do you feel like this theater is giving these black actors a chance as if they're not talented, as if they're not able, as if they are incompetent? You know what I mean? Like if like as if this theater just it's like, hey, let's just give them a chance and see what happens. You know what I mean? You're undermining all of ours, all of our education, all of our training. Like, that's just disrespectful. Three, the fact that this is astonishing to you and you're a subscriber to this theater, which means you see shows here often and you don't see black people on stage to the point where you stop these two random black people who are just there because you feel like you need to say that to them. That's a problem. That's a systemic fucking problem. Like, so, and I say this to say that these theaters know what kind of subscribers they have, right? And these theaters are about making their money and they don't want to piss off their subscribers. I mean, to the point where they'll even tell us I work front of house. Like if it's a donor or a subscriber, we need to treat them different. We should take more shit from them, right? Because they give them money. Me, I've never been that type of person. Don't disrespect me. I don't care. I'm serving you right now because it's my job because I'm getting paid to do it, but I'm not your slave. I don't even need this. Like I don't need this, right? But anyway, um, I don't even remember what the question.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I love it when people go off on a rant because they get so passionate, and I love it. Even if it's like something that I maybe agree or disagree with, like if we're having an argument, seeing somebody who is that passionate about this thing that they care about is awesome to me, and I love it. Uh, well, a good example, I think, for like to go back to the question for what I was kind of thinking about when I was formulating this question in my head was there was a post somebody made on Facebook a while ago, another fight choreographer, who said that they were doing a production of The Three Musketeers with an all black cast. And one of the things that they were asking people online about is like, oh, is there some kind of like Afro Caribbean style that I can give them for their choreography to fight with? And it's one of those things where I'm like, I was kind of like torn in between two things because one is like I love the idea of increasing the representation of African martial arts and African diasporic martial arts, but on the other hand,
Hmm.
if they're still using rapiers, which apparently they were still going to be using rapiers, it's like why can't they just fight like a French swordsman? Especially considering the fact that like the author of the Three Musketeers was black. His stories were based off of his father, who was also a black general during the French Revolution, and he fought like a French cavalier officer. So why can't they do that? Like, and it's a point that I made in the video essay that I'm making, which is like a lot of fight choreographers, especially like white choreographers and fencers as well, like sport fencers or historical martial arts and stuff like that. They've fully admitted that they have like been inspired by stuff like the Count of Monte Cristo or the Three Musketeers. And I'm like, I want you to think about that for a second. White people were inspired to do sword fighting by something a black person wrote, and we still rarely see black people get to play those roles.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is important to represent these non-European styles of fighting, like hands down. It is also important to recognize that European does not mean non-black. There are black people every fucking where. Like, you know what I mean? So I agree with you. Like, we need to see we need to be represented doing um things that are characteristic of our native cultures, but we need to not be left out of the European styles of fighting, and like we need to see ourselves doing that as well, or else we just inherently think it's not for us, or that's not our people. Like, black people don't carry swords, you
Yes,
know.
because that's the thing too. It's like, well, what if your native culture is France? Like Alexander Dumas was born in France. He grew up in France. He didn't come from Africa. He didn't come from 80. He was born in France, raised as a French person.
Yeah,
To him, that's his culture, and that's
yeah,
what his books were.
exactly.
They were about the French culture.
That's what I'm saying. So like yeah, yeah. Our culture is not just Africa. Our people are everywhere, everywhere. Like, there are Black English people, Black French. I, I mean, it's not for us. You
Yeah, like
know,
that.
like
That was
that's inclusion right there. That's inclusion.
yes. Like and that was the thing I was just thinking about was like it's great to get representation of non-European cultures that can also be faithful to those non-European cultures. Like, oh, I'm gonna actually do Haitian machete fencing for this show, so I'm gonna talk to some Haitian machete practitioners to faithfully represent it. But also, it's like, I mean, if they're gonna be the Three Musketeers, they don't have to do that, you
Yeah,
know?
let them be some black ass musketeers with their swords. Like, you don't gotta, like, that's, like I said, inclusion. Yeah, like,
I one final question. I'm unless I come up with more and you have time to answer them. But what what changes would you personally like to see within the fight community or specific fight organizations to help elevate, represent, include, make equal for non-white cis straight men?
scholarships. They'll have the money. We need diversity and inclusion scholarships. Like, I don't remember if I was saying this before the actual interview started, of just my experience at the Winter Wonderland workshop. Um, I was fortunate enough to have an outside scholarship. It didn't come from there. But there were three black people, one black woman, including me, but three black people. I know for a fact that I was on scholarship. I know that one was an intern and they don't pay their tuition. And then there was one other, you know, but we have all of these white people here. So why aren't these black people here? Is because we are not exposed to it. We don't see ourselves in it. We cannot afford it. Because I mean, even just talking to the people who are there and the people who go to these workshops often, that means they're taking weeks off of work, if they work, That means you got a flight, you have a hotel, especially if it's not in your city, which 9 times out of 10 it isn't. I was fortunate enough that I went to the one in Chicago. It just worked out that way. But like, it took me over a year to even like find one uh where in a city where I knew I would have somewhere to stay, that I wouldn't have to pay for. Like all of these factors are in my mind. And then I have these people like, yeah, I went to all these, yeah, my parents just paid for it, and all my flights and hotels, and I'm like, that's fortunate, that's
Yeah.
privileged, you know what I mean? And I'm out here trying to get work, feed myself. Not that I don't have parental support, I do, but it's not like that. Like that's
Yeah.
a totally different type of parental support, you know, that is often not seen in our communities, our Black and Brown communities. Like, so I mean, the fact that I know that money is an issue and is one thing that stops us from going. It stops because, one, I know it stops me from going to a lot of the workshops that I want to go to. But I know it is a factor because it always is. That's just like the thing that's understood, you know. Um, and for that to be such a simple solution to me, offer scholarships, offer diversity and inclusion scholarships, because then you have these people who are looking for these types of scholarships, and then you find them, you don't even know, maybe you've never fought in your life, but now that there's an opportunity to, and you don't have to worry about coming up with the money for it, because they're expensive AF, especially if you're going to the national one in 3 weeks and you're doing these SPTs and yada yada. um you know, you find that, and now all of a sudden you have this opportunity, you have the means to do it, and your whole world can open up. Like I said, I was fortunate enough to be in a grad school program that I did get a full scholarship to, that did open up all these lanes for me to find, what I was passionate about. It's all about exposure and resources. And that's what we as Black people usually don't have. But when we do, we can soar. We can soar. Like I said, I never did fight choreography or Shakespeare until I went to grad school. And now that's like the bulk of the jobs that I've had. Shakespeare. I'm choreographing shows. Like, my first professional show, I was nominated and won a Jeff.
Yeah.
All because, like, that's crazy. 3 years ago, oh shit, what's this year? Yeah, 4 years ago, I'd never picked up a sword in my life. You know, exposure and resources and exposure. Try to get us. You're not trying. You're not trying to get more Black and Brown people at all. You're not marketing it to us. You're not trying to help us get there. Like, that's because that's how you go in these fight classes. Like, that's how you're going to learn the classes in these workshops. Good luck.
I probably should ask this in the beginning. Are you like still active within the SAFD? Like, is it something that like you're going for like a certain career trajectory within the SAFD, or are you kind of like, I'm gonna branch out on my own and do my own thing?
Well, definitely, I was. I don't know what all the status about, like, fighting and touching and everything right now. I don't know what is happening right now, but yeah, absolutely, because that's how I was introduced to the fight world, was through SAFD certified choreographers and fight directors. Those are my teachers, right? So for the probably like the first 2 years, which were my last 2 years of grad school, that's what I thought was the one thing. Like, I thought it was all just SAFD. I thought if you needed to be certified, you need to be a certified choreographer before you can like start, doing the things, and you're fight director and fight you know what I mean? Like I'm like, oh yes, that's what I need to do. I need to um, move up this ladder. And going to my first workshop, okay, like I don't, I mean, I had a blast. I did, even with all the things. But I because I love fighting. I love learning new things. All the classes that I took were new. You know, new weapons or just a new concept, just a new like perspective on fighting. That was all very new to me, and I hadn't really done it. I hadn't been in a class in over a year, you know, since I graduated. So, um, what was the question again?
Like, are you still interested in pursuing through the SAFD
Right,
or branching out?
right, right. So, yes, but also I now know that I'm not just limited to SAFD workshops and or like their criteria, so to speak. Um, but yeah, a lot of their like principles and they kind of like their style, their like um outlook on the whole thing. I do, you know, love it because that's like my foundation in it. So yeah, 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 most definitely. But I do, but you know, my mission is to get more black people, black and brown people, and more, and specifically women into the SAFD.
Yeah,
So
there was another person I was talking to who like he actually like it was very sweet. Basically, what he said, which is like, I don't feel like I do have a place in like these Shakespeare plays or in fight choreography, but that makes me want to do it more. I want to
yeah,
make them recognize me and make a place for myself so that other people can see it and feel like they have a place there. And I thought that was like really beautiful the way he put it.
yeah, yeah,
um,
most definitely.
yeah,
Most
it is one of those things where it's like for me it was one of those things where like I was seeing all these people come out about like oh racism that exists in Broadway and the casting process and theater and film and all this stuff, and I was like nobody else gonna talk about like fight choreography and how and I'm specifically focusing on theater because I don't know much about film. I do know people have voiced stuff about it about the problematic elements of stunt work in the film industry if you are a black or a person of color, and like oh we need somebody to do this stunt for this light like darker skinned or a lighter skinned black person, let's get a white guy and just put some bronzer on him for the stunt role kind of a thing, and I was like or same with women too, like oh let's get a like it's a stunt double for women, let's just get a guy and give him some costumes that make it look like he got boobs and get the wig because it's fine. And it's actually even more harder for women sometimes because usually in these films that involve stunts they're wearing more um, scantily clad, like so there's not room to hide padding for all these stunts like there are in men's costume, which is usually like these big bulky tactical things. It's like or a full suit they can put pads on. Women can't because the character
mhm.
that they're doing the stunt double for doesn't have anything to cover that up. So like I have heard a lot about that, but I don't personally work that much at all really in the stunt industry, and I wanted to focus on fight choreography for theater specifically because it tends to get less attention. Like everybody talks about
Mhm,
stunts in films because everybody sees these films and see like, oh, that was
mhm.
I love John Wick or I love this thing, but nobody's like, oh yes, I saw a production of William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, and the fighting was absolutely fan. Like nobody talks about that.
Yeah, right, right,
Unless you're a fight choreographer, you're not terribly interested in fight choreography all the time.
exactly. Or it
uh,
just happens and you're like, woo, that was cool.
yeah.
You know?
Ooh, shiny.
Right, shiny, ting ting. I'm not gonna lie, that's how I be choreographing. I'm like, I like shiny things. But yeah, we could have a whole another conversation just about like over sexualization of women and
Oh yeah, there's
on
a few books.
screen when you when
There's a
you
few books I got specifically talking about like gender and gender expression in action films and with females in
yeah,
films that eventually I'm gonna read too once I like carve through my entire mountain of books that I need to read.
right. right? Especially the action films. It's like, okay, we need to see these women naked while they're fighting.
Yeah,
Like,
they can fight, but they got to be sexy while they fight.
exactly.
Which
With no protection, like all the skin showing. Like,
which is really funny, because one of the things I also do is like I study like historical European martial arts as well as historical African martial arts, and the Italians are all about looking sexy. Like if you read the way that they're supposed to, like, you need to move like this when you're fighting, you're like, is this a manual for like Project Runway? Because it's all about like shoulders back, hips moving while you're moving the sword. They're like, you may die, but you better look fucking sexy when you die.
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to that, just like, um, and putting white people in bronzer and shit and making them look black, like that is the entire film industry, really. Like, one of the things that always makes me mad when I think about it is when they try to have Zoe Saldana play fucking Nina Simone. Like, you rather put her in blackface with a prosthetic nose than get a black African woman who looks like what? You know?
Yeah.
Like, it's shit like that. But I'm just like, who made these decisions? Who okayed it all these times?
Yeah.
And who put their money into it?
Who said it was okay for Christian Bale to be Moses?
It's embarrassing. Y'all should be embarrassed.
Yeah, like, and that is one of the things that I always find like a little bit comforting, is that you get a lot more of general audiences being like, you know what? No, we're not gonna accept this anymore. You know, like that Exodus absolutely failed. Gods of Egypt absolutely failed. It's like you got Gerard Butler as an Egyptian god. He's Scottish. It's like, come
I was
on.
such a big fan before then.
And you got one black guy as an Egyptian god. Everybody else is white. You know.
And you know what kills me, like, things like, the Hunger Games, when people were mad because Rue was black, and it's like, that's because that was your projection on her.
Mm-hmm.
Reading this book,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? You projected, and now you're mad because, look.
Yeah.
Anyway, like I said, look, we're about to go on a tangent to Mexico.
Burn it down. Burn it down.
Like, look. For real. And I'm glad everything is happening right now, even though this shit is not new.
Yes.
I'm glad that this movement is exposing a lot of it to people who weren't already exposed, or who, it was easy for them to live oblivious of it, or at least act like they were oblivious of it. And now they can't, because it's in their face every day, all day, So that's what I'm really appreciative of. But what they need to realize is that this is nothing new.
Yeah.
This has been happening since the beginning of our history
Mm-hmm.
in America.
I can't remember who said it, but somebody did say, like, it's not that the police are doing more, like, being more brutal than they used to be. We just have it on camera now.
Mm-hmm.
This has always been a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in your face now, and
Yeah.
especially at this time where, like this one pandemic made way for a second pandemic, because that's what everybody's doing. They're watching the news, they're at home, they're on social media, like, you know what I mean? Is we don't have things to distract from it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what I was watching, but they're like, or maybe I was talking to somebody, but they were like, yeah, there's no sports. You can't be like, oh, yeah, but sports.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's so bad, but the Super Bowl. Like, like that's what, it's easier to just distract yourself from it,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're not living it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially if it's not directly affecting you and your community every day, and you can turn your back to it. That's privilege. And, these people can't scroll down their timelines without seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. It's just that there's no distractions. If you're not working, you don't have work to distract you. You don't have no school, no nothing. And it's like, it's right there. I can't, I'm so bad. I can't remember the name of the um, Broadway playwright who put up that rant on Facebook about the racism that was in Broadway and talking. Griffin Matthews. That was his name, Griffin Matthews. Um, I remember watching an episode of The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. Oh no, it wasn't even an episode. It was a post he made where he was talking about, like, I think one of the things that made the Amy Cooper incident stand out was that it was basically in your face, this idea of weaponizing systemic racism. Like, she
Hmm.
knew very well what she was doing. She absolutely knew, like, as a white person, if I call the police and say that a black man is threatening me or endangering me, it is threatening that man's life. And it was one of those things where it's like right in your face, completely exposed. You cannot ignore that anymore. You can't be like, well, it's this thing, well, it's that. You see that this person who is like a liberal, and progressive, weaponizing systemic racism against somebody else.
Exactly. And then, like, to come back and be and act like she was scared. Like, oh no, I wasn't trying to. I was just scared. Why were you scared? Bitch, walk away. I don't. He was not pursuing you. And then also the fact that no one could say anything negative about him. You know, George Floyd, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin. They always find something, a picture that looks I don't know, suspicious or incriminating. He stole something, and they always find something negative to try and cloud, even though they know it's still unjust. Like like they deserved none of what they got, but no one could say anything bad. He was bird watching. We don't even I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I had never even known of a black person that was like into the bird watching. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, that's the most peaceful thing. Like, that's the most peaceful thing you could do. But like, no one can say anything negative about him, you know, to even cloud anyone's judgment. Because some people they take that and blow it up. That's their whole justification. What they've been doing all of our lives, justifying their treatment of us. We're lesser. We're criminals. We this. We that. And that justifies it. Even a one little grain of anything, someone will blow up because that makes them feel better.
That's one of the things that I, going back to theater, a lot of the people that I have been listening to talking about their experiences in Broadway and theater have been talking about, like, I don't feel like I can speak up, or I don't feel like I can issue any kind of complaint or call out anything because then I'm viewed as difficult. I will get some form of blacklisted. I will get, like, people will discourage working with me, and it was one of those things where, one, I was told specifically about a scenario where that happened, and two, I kind of partially witnessed the aftermath of one. There was a friend of mine who is a fight choreographer, is a female, and is a person of color. And we were doing a show, fight callbacks for a show that we were working on, the company I work with, not her. We were doing these fight callbacks, and the director was looking for another person of color to join the show because she wanted to try and shuffle around the cast because it was a remount of a show that she had already done. And the people she had playing some of the older roles, she's like, well, they're older now and they don't really fit the role, and I don't want to have to tell this guy, hey, could you go starve yourself for 6 weeks so that, like, you can fit the role again, because that's inhumane. And we had mentioned our friend who was a fight choreographer, who was a person of color, like, oh, what about her? Like, she knows how to fight. She'd be great for the show. And the director said somebody at a party had told her that that person, who was a woman, who was a person of color and a fight choreographer, was dangerous. And we've worked with her and we're like, she's not dangerous. And, like, it was one of those things where I'm like, somebody, in order to kind of, like, forward their own career, essentially, chose one of the only female people of color fight choreographers in Chicago to badmouth, to discourage them from getting hired in a role that oh, I want to be the fight choreographer. And this same person has also had experiences where if there was a problem with the choreography, whether in a teaching environment or a show environment, she would often get the blame lumped on her. And like it's one of those things where like you think about it for like when you first hear like again for me well, the first time I heard it I was like well that's kind of shitty and then the more I thought about it I'm like wow that's actually really insidious and fucked up.
Yeah,
um
yeah. Because I mean, I did a show and choreographed the show, and then and I was under the impression that everything went great. You know, like the director was a young woman of color. We were communicating, we were going back and forth. The cast is all black, um, yada yada. So, but then months later, I hear through the grapevine that one of my friends that knows her, like um, that she was telling people that I was like unprofessional, that I didn't come to rehearsal early enough, and that actors were getting hurt. That actors were getting hurt, right? Okay. My thing is, one, let's move backwards because I know for a fact that I would never choreograph anything that would put any actor in danger. One. Two, I'm constantly checking in with my actors because everybody's body is different. Things sit in people's bodies differently, and sometimes you need to adjust. Like this is the move. I give them the recipe, and I'm like, within that, there's this much wiggle room. If this feels better in your body, do it this way. Like that's the whole time. Every time I choreograph something, like that's just how I was taught. How I always teach them that that's my first priority is to keep you safe. That's why I'm here. It's like we can do this but safely, that you can do this night after night, right? And I'm just not the person, and I can't speak how anyone else sees me, but I'm just not a person that goes into a room to intimidate anybody. Like I always try to come at whoever I talk to face, as if we are on the same level. Like, because that's how you communicate to people. You can't be too talking down, and you can't be too like talking up to them, and I like as if you're not worthy. You can't be can you please, but you also can't be like, you need to do this. So that's like my main thing. um Two, I'm like, look, this is my first time I've ever worked with you. If you give me a call time, I'm gonna come in at that time. If you want me to come early, you need to communicate that to me. Like, but the fact that, like, why am I hearing this through the grapevine and nothing was ever said to me, especially about actors being hurt? Because that could be a number of different things. That could be just you not doing what I told you correctly. That could mean that you did it this first day and now something has changed. So let me know, right? Why did you feel that you couldn't talk to me? Why did you feel like you had to bring a white man in? Like, so was he easier to talk to in this room full of black people than me? Was it just my, like, this is my thinking, like, why was that a thing? And like, why are you talking shit about me behind my back to other people in the industry without ever saying anything to me? Like, that's not even fair to me, because it's all like 10 times out of 10, that's miscommunication. That's something that you just expected that I did not do because it was not communicated to me. This is our first time working together. You know what I mean? So I have my order of operations and you have yours. And if they're not the same, don't talk shit about me. Communicate with me. Like, you know what I mean? Because I'm here, because this whole time, I'm communicating with the director, like, because it's my job, I was feeling, to make your story come to life. Like your vision, your vision come to life and do it safely, you know? So the fact that, like, I thought everything went great and we were cool until months later when I heard it through the grapevine, that's conniving. That's shady.
I
That's
I feel like there's a comparison that can be drawn between what Amy Cooper did in the park and what fight choreographers sometimes have a bad habit of doing, which is they weaponize the idea of safety to disenfranchise other choreographers. It's like, well, in order for me to discourage this person from getting hired, I'll tell people that they're not safe because everybody cares about safety. But I'll tell everybody that these people's choreography is unsafe. But I won't talk to the person who's doing the choreography, like the choreographer themselves, and be like, hey, I'm a little concerned. Can you show me how this is supposed to be safe or what safeties are in place? Because to me it appears unsafe. Can I ask you like what you're doing to make sure it's safe? Like they don't talk to the choreographer. They tend to go behind the choreographer's back and just badmouth them by saying they're unsafe, whether they know the full extent of the situation or not.
Yeah, that's my whole thing. And if it was said that, oh, actors were getting hurt. They said actors were getting hurt and they didn't feel comfortable talking to me about it. Why? Why? And you being the director, if that was the case, in whatever world, why didn't you say something to me? You know what I mean? I don't, and like I said, I don't approach any situation like talking down to anybody. Like I just don't understand why they felt that, half the cast was kind of like middle age and half of them were like younger, like, high school, like college, but like we weren't too different in age, and you mean to tell me that these older people, who was it that was getting hurt and didn't feel comfortable talking to me? Like, and also you as a director, like, I just feel like if I'm a part of this team, you as the director or the leader of this team should be able to communicate with me. But why not? Why isn't that so? Is it because I look the way that I do? Like, because I am the way that I am? I, you know, I don't know. I don't know. That was just also just a little something that's been on my heart.
Yeah,
But I'm
yeah,
just kind of, I'm just talking at this point. I'm just talking.
yeah. But like this, like honestly, like this is like great because it's something that needs to be said. People need to be aware of this. People need to know that this is a thing that happens, and they often don't. One of the people who I was talking to about this, uh, he had voiced this complaint a while ago, and when I talked to him recently, like called him back up to be like, hey, I know that you like complained about this, like the Winter Wonderland and lack of diversity, like kind of a while ago. Was there any follow up with that? Like, did anybody else kind of reach out and contact me? He was like, no, you were the only one who ever reached out and contacted me to follow up. And I'm like, oh, so they're not even aware that it's really a problem. They think it's just this one thing, this one incident of somebody who's unhappy. Um,
Mm, yeah. Well, that's why I thank you for doing this, because this is like something that they need to see.
I mean, I should be thanking you. Like you didn't have to tell me anything, but you chose to. Like honestly, it's one of those things where I'm really grateful for this. The opportunity, giving me the opportunity and the privilege to hear your story and hear your experience. It's something that I'm very grateful for.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, really. 'Cause, cause, the most I've done is just go on rants to people, go on rants about it to people, and but never really like documenting. I know I made a couple nights driving home from, because I live on the south side, but the workshop was in Rosemont, like, up by O'Hare. So
Hmm.
I had a pretty cool little drive home, and I would just kind of like document my thoughts for the day. and yeah,
What
yeah,
neighborhood do you live in?
I made it. Bronzeville.
Oh, okay. I used to live in Bridgeport.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I really liked it. There was a great burger place down the street.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, like, one of the jokes I just kind of made to myself, because I always like have my nails done, and like, fighting, sword, whatever, like my nails are always done. And the first day I broke a nail before I even started fighting. I was just like putting my shoe on, and I was like, okay,
Aw.
this is how this day is gonna go. I was like, really all this, and then I break my nail. But I was like, this is why. Like I had a broken nail. I was like, this is why Black women don't fight. but but it, yeah, that was just.
I
But
can't
you know,
ruin
it's like the
this.
same. It's like it's the same. Why don't Black women swim for real? Like, because our fucking hair. It's a lot of things that are just like culturally and like just biologically different that are that is still like valid, but because everything that has been made or developed is based on like the white experience, things that cater to us now seem special or like different. Like I just saw like this one Black woman made these like waterproof headscarves that can actually hold our hair so that Black people can swim, because they said 80% of Black people don't swim just because of like the toll that it takes on our hair. Like, um just like, washing it out, and our hair is not as oily, it's curly, it's kinky, like if it's not taken care of, it will break off, it will look crazy. But who has time to like, if you want to go swimming every day, no, we just don't want that extra work. Like it's like, it's a process and it takes time. Like, so do we have an extra 2 hours after we go swimming every day to wash and condition and dry our hair and, make sure that, it's healthy? No. But up until this time, like, so now we have like these special scarves now because our hair doesn't fit under a swim cap. Is this getting into a swim cap? No. Like, but yeah, but that just, that's literally just a reflection of everything, really.
Yeah, of American culture.
Yeah, exactly. And so, of course, it's in stage combat.
Well, thank you so much again. Like we've been talking for almost an hour and a half now.
I
Uh,
know. I just be
yeah,
talking.
this was actually really great though. And yeah, but that's great. Thank
But
you so
yes,
much again. Thank
yes,
you.
let's do it.
I cannot, and I will send you a link once I have the video finished or roughly finished. But thank you again. Like really, this is I cannot thank you enough for what you're doing.
Likewise, I do thank you. You're doing the work. Like I said, like, thank you for putting together, a tangible thing
Thank
that we
you.
can see and hear, and
Thank you. Well, you have a good day. Stay safe, okay?
you too. Likewise. Nice
Bye.
talking to you.
Good talking
Bye.
to you too. Bye.